start with, I mean, VR is becoming ubiquitous. I mean, the VR equipment is becoming as cheap as $200. That means potentially 2 years from now, every student will have one. Every employee will have one. Potentially every citizen will have one. This year alone, it's expected that 70 million students will experience VR for the first time across the world. Question is, what are they going to see? What are they going to experience first? There are countless applications in the education space. And with the way we see it is really from student education in for fifth graders to lifelong learning, including in nursing homes. So how will it impact education? I am also like a father of two young, 2 and 5 years old, and it's true that when I look at them watching a digital screen, watching a film or watching a movie, or I kind of help ask myself, like, how is this new digital world going to really impact their life? How is it going to make their world better? How it will make them better people, more successful people? And I guess with VR, this question is really important. And VR is highly technological. It's very immersive, but it's also it's visually technology getting into your face. That's a wearable technology. It's very impressive when you look at all these pictures of all these people wearing this technology. It raises questions that are, I think, very, very relevant. And in the last 2 years, we've been working with instructional designers and about 5,000 content creators from around the world, trying to figure out what this VR world could bring to education. So out of this experience, we find that 5 ways are that VR can be impactful in a good way in 5 different ways. So first one is, may seem a little bit obvious, but VR makes you more focused. It's once you wear it, you start wearing and you forget about the environment you are in. You don't have access to your phone. You are more focused. That's natively what VR is about. I mean, wherever you are, whatever environment, whatever country, whatever, you put the headset on, you teleport it somewhere else. That's the power of VR. And it works very good for short, intense experiences where in 2 to 3 seconds, you forget totally about the world you were in before you put the headset. Very powerful to that extent. So it is more engaging. So it can make education more engaging. One of the original use of VR that we have, an application of VR and our technology that we found is from Harvard University that is using Wonda to create immersive learning experiences to learn French. So they are testing it in their language courses. The idea is to actually immerse the student into the culture of the language so they can learn faster. So when they actually travel to the country, which we all hope they will do, particularly me, they will be happy to discuss, to engage with people, and they will do it more easily, more naturally. So what they design is it's a kind of a course module where students are invited to visit, Parisians and actually get into their homes. So what they did is that they gave like 360-degree video cameras to 4 Parisians and asked them to document their life on a daily basis. So you would get very authentic materials that are way more interesting than what you usually get in textbooks. By the way, most teachers are saying they use the grammar component to it. But everything that is more like a cultural thing, like how to differentiate a baguette from whatever, is not interesting and not relevant to students. So here is like you really get to go into this very place where Aude, one of the Parisian, is actually going to every morning to get her coffee. That's the bartender she actually interacts with. And you get to witness this 2-minute scene, and there are 10 of them for each character. And that will drive discussion, because that's one of the most interesting aspects, that all the materials and all the stories, so this, the schedule of a week-long journey with Ode is actually used in the classroom to actually get the students to discuss about how it works, and really to make it engaging within the classroom. And I think one of the interesting ways they are using it is they are actually using so they are pairing students by two. One of the students is actually wearing the experience, so being with Ode, and actually telling his fellow student what he's actually seeing in the headset. So it's a very active experience, and then they can reflect all together with the instructor on what they saw, what was interesting, what are all the details that told something about the culture, and that students can use to practice their French. In fact, these engagement things can be measured in terms of retention. So research from Stanford University is showing that retention rate can go up to 4 times higher in VR than with other traditional medium. This is thanks to, maybe it's because it's more focused, because it's also new, it's true, but because there is more emotional engagement. VR is a very cognitively strong and powerful cognitive tool. The third kind of ways that we think about when we think about VR, that we think VR can make basically education more a mind-opening experience. So most people are, and that don't know much about VR or thinking about it, are afraid for good reasons that it can take out of reality. They can basically have us and have extract ourselves from reality and escape reality to go into fully virtual worlds. What we've seen is that VR is a computer revolution as big as the personal computer revolution has been, and actually even bigger. Certain people like to think. And it's true that VR can be used today for many, many different things, including exactly the opposite, which is than to extract yourself from reality, but really to reconnect reality with, so that you can better understand other people, so you can better understand other cultures, so you can have truly real life situations that can help you prepare for when you're actually going to be doing this thing you need to do. This, whether you are studying management, whether you are studying conflict resolution, sexual harassment, drug addiction. There's so many different ways you want to have a first experience first virtually before you're going to have it in real life. And VR is going to help you do that. As you know, 1 out of 3 students believe they are not prepared for the workforce. And the question is, how can VR be used for that? So one of the examples that actually I've been showing just before I started the presentation that I'd be happy to show to those of you who haven't seen it is for caregivers that are treating people with dementia. So the idea is for a caregiver that every day has to deal with people who they do not understand the disease, to be able to actually step into their shoes, so they can totally change perspective and see themselves taking care of a patient with dementia. The idea is to grow empathy, is to grow better understanding, is to retain these employees, these low-level employees, on the longer term. This type of experiences are 10 minutes long. They are used as with a French learning course as an experience that is meant to be used in the training center. But you can imagine that at some point it will be used also for remote and distant learning. Same applies to every industry, really. The University of North Carolina is working on with a management school on how to use VR for developing negotiating skills. How you can use VR to better negotiate in an international environment, in this case. And so you have the ability to switch perspectives and hear what the other person is thinking in his head while you're trying to sell them a product or a deal. First thing is it's to make more learners more creative. I mean, for those of you who have experienced VR before, you can imagine that to create these VR experiences is very fulfilling. What you're doing is that, if you compare it to shooting a photo or shooting a video, for a student report, for example. Whatever you're going to be documenting, when you're going to be watching it in a VR headset, is like you're watching it on a gigantic screen, like an IMAX screen, right? So for students, it's very fulfilling to create VR content. It's also very interesting because it's so new and because there's so much things to do. There's no rules yet. The grammar is still to be defined. It's an Eldorado in terms of creativity. Everything can be thought of. Every idea, and I'm sure you're going to find on campus like VR meetups where students are experimenting with the medium and trying ideas in many different areas. And the last thing is how VR can actually make education more equitable. We were talking about how affordable these headsets are. Think about, if VR is so powerful at bringing you real life experiences that would be so expensive to get to you. Say you study in India, or you study in South Africa, and you want to get an experience of what it is to work for this US company that you're going to be working with. How are you going to do it until you actually make the trip? This is going to be, this is an expensive decision. So if VR can help you get this experience and prepare for it, you're going to be more effective while on the spot. And to that extent, I believe that VR can actually make education, which is to be experience-based, more accessible. So, oh, by the way, that's kind of an interesting picture. So this was taken from, it's in Bangalore in India. So we've been doing like 2-day workshops with students from the University of Bangalore, so that they can learn how to create their own VR piece, and then we did like a showcase with outdoor showcase of all the experiences that were done, so that people from all generations could come and actually experience VR and VR experiences that were made by their own fellow students. So the problem is, and that's what we've been addressing since the start, is that to create, to distribute, to track any type of VR experiences is kind of complicated. So there are game engines you can use to do VR experiences such as Unity, such as Unreal, that are game engines. So basically meant to be used for games. They are pretty easy to use. You can take up to 3 to 4 weeks to get yourself accustomed with the tools. They are really made to be used for games. That's really what they are for. So not necessary for this type of experience. If you're talking about how to recreate real life experiences, there are ways you're going to be using 360-degree video cameras much more effectively than you're going to try to recreate a fully virtual environment. But most of all, if you want to publish it, you want to to publish it everywhere and distribute it to anywhere around the planet, you're going to need to have a server. You're going to need to package to stream it, to package it. It's a complicated thing to do. So what we created is a solution from the creation to the distribution, and we go into the details of the creation part, because that's, I think, where we come in place pretty good. So that basically you buy a 360-degree video camera from whatever, there are maybe 50 different 360-degree cameras from $200 to $20,000. You can use your existing video editing tools. And then you're going to use Wonda as an authoring solution so that you can add interactivity on top of your videos. So you can create like branching narratives, you can add quizzes, you can add multiple choice scenarios. And everything you're going to do, you're going to be able to synchronize it in the cloud and then share it on all devices. So you build it once and share it anywhere. So just as a quick, so that the sound might be a little bit heavy here. That's a 1 minute short video. So really showing you like how it works. I hope you can see. Yeah. So it's a drag-and-drop interface. You can create as many scenes as you want and add your graphic assets, so you can build your own interface on top of your 360 content. There is a timeline, and most of all, there is this interaction editor. So basically, we are talking about interactions in terms of gaze interaction. So when I look at something, I can trigger interactions. So you can define hotspots, you can define objects that are going to be triggering interactions. And then you can say, when I look at this projector, this is going to show like this block of text. When I look at you, it's going to show your profile, so I can understand who you are. It could trigger an audio, so I can hear what you're actually thinking right now when I'm looking at you. You know, these kind of things. You can have, and this is pretty advanced, you can go pretty well. You can trigger interactions when I gaze at something, so when I keep looking at something for 2 seconds, or you can define the time you want, or you can say, what it's going to do if I gaze away from something, and that can trigger also something.
So, if I could ask a question there, in the example of the French class,
yeah.
are they using that visual prompt to select responses? Like, how would that work in practice?
In practice, so for the, if you want, we can actually navigate via the French class afterwards. But it will be important to make the overall experience more personalized. So so it can be more at the the student can choose his or her own pace of navigation. So you can chapterize, so you can go back, go forward. So you can also define the level of information you're going to show. So if, for example, I want to listen to this piece and I don't necessarily want to see the transcript, but at some point I want to re-listen to this piece and show a transcript, that you can use it for that. You can use it for branching narrative to say, like, if I choose this, then I'm going to go to this next level, or this is going to. And you can use it for quizzes. You can, like multiple choice scenario, and so you can have like a formative assessment into the experience. So that's kind of of use you can have. But we'll see it in practice. So everything I do here, so that's a desktop. I can preview it in my browser to kind of see how it looks like. Test all the interactions, and then synchronize it once I'm done. So I can synchronize it in the cloud. So all the experience is going to be pushed to online servers, so you can share it with one link. So I think I actually did send you, some of you, a link today. I'd be happy to send you some of the links of the other experiences. So that means that when you open this link, whatever the device you're going to be on, you're going to be able to see this experience, whether on a PC, whether on a mobile, whether on a VR headset like Oculus, HTC Vive, or Daydream, or whatever headset you have. So you can start the experience right away. Yeah. So really, I mean, as I was saying, both the authoring and the distribution are hand in hand, and they are very important because, I mean, as you know, as we were saying at the beginning, VR is going fast, but it's still new. People need to test ideas, and if you want to test ideas, you need people to test it. You need people to test it fast. You need to you need to have a collaboration process that works well. So even if we're not together, and I'm finishing something, and I tried a new idea, and I want to send it to you so you can test it and tell me what you think. I mean, this whole thing has to be fast. That's very important. So you can iterate, you can fail, you can build on errors, and so you can be successful. So that's the whole process of sharing. We also thought about it as a way to improve your creative potential and how you can improve the experiments you're going to be making with Wonda. So far as we have 5,000 registered users. Most of them are instructional designers working for higher ed and in the workplace. It's about 40 different universities, 5 different departments at NYU, from global studies to film school to social workers to personalized studies, to Pearson, who is making content for both like K-12 to psychology courses. So what they did is that they added psychology courses, 140 of them, to their Revel platform. I don't know if you're familiar with Revel. So basically, what the idea is that they are adding these VR modules as extras to their psychology course for undergrads. And what their marketing research have shown is that, yes, students are 60% more likely to buy these courses if there's a VR component to it. And I think they are almost there, but to actually tell the student, like, if you buy this course, then we're going to ship you a headset, right? Because that's still the situation. But also in the workforce, like Mass Mutual, for example, is doing some interesting stuff around emotional intelligence in the workplace. And everything regarding onboarding is pretty big as well. We go through it. So professional training for medical assistant, we talked about that. History courses and psychology for ed, yes. Talking about prices, so we made everything so it's very affordable. It starts at $79 for yearly subscriptions for students. So we have students coming to us actually to do a research presentation paper. So instead of doing a slideshow or a PDF about their research or website, they want to do a VR piece. So they're going to be documenting whatever they are researching. It could be on the history of New York, whatever, and then show it as a VR experience at the end of a curriculum. And it goes all the way to $3,500 for 50 seats for campus subscription. That's pretty much it for this presentation. First of all, do you have questions? And then I'll be happy to kind of go through the French course.
Do you have like preferred hardware that your platform works well with or better?
Optimized for.
Yeah, I mean, because you're using like real footage, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. That's great.
So it's we have been pretty successful so far using in terms of cameras the Ricoh Theta 5, which are very like still kind of middle price range, like $400 for the higher end part of this category. In terms of a VR headset, we have been using mostly like the Samsung Gear VR. So basically, it's on both a phone and a headset. So the headset is like $100, and then the phone is like $300. Now we are very anxious and very excited about this new headset I was mentioning in the beginning, which are $200 headsets. But the Oculus Go, and there is another one on the Google side called by Lenovo.
Yes, I like that one.
Someone
was with me. But
have you tried it? Yeah.
Yes, and it's very light and it's mobile
and it's all in one, and you don't have to do anything. Yeah. So that I think would be because this price range I think is pretty good. Then if you have like students, or if you really want to set up like a workstation for people to edit and create and need to really like watch and like a preview quickly what they do in a very professional kind of setup, then I would recommend you use for this workstation an Oculus Rift or HTC Vive. Okay. Because it's then you need to connect it to the computer, but that means also like you have in one click you're like type. Okay, that looks good. Okay, I put it back and continue to edit. It's much more, and it's much more comfortable to use. So for a long period of times and stuff. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Can I pass this to you?
Can you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you talk about the sort of production effort? So for a 5-minute experience, what goes into that versus something like the French course or the psychology and history courses? I mean, how much is going into that production? Grossly, I'm sure it varies.
Yeah, that's a good and tough question to answer for sure. So Yeah, one way to answer this is that it can go. You can produce something compelling that you're going to be able to test with students or learners in 2 days. Okay. I mean, when I say 2 days, it's from the first shoot, first recording to the actual delivery of the experience. There are a couple of things you need to do before that to make it to this kind of quick process. Is really to be able to understand how to use these cameras first. So for that, you need to do a few tests. These cameras are very easy to use. It's just like a press button. You just press play and press record, and it records everything. But you still need to understand how you're going to be using it for the very purpose of yours. So, for example, you may want to understand by yourself. There is some good guidance. There's some great actually tutorials on Coursera about how to do 360 filmmaking and stuff that I would recommend. So you don't make mistakes that will make this content not usable. For example, these 360 videos, for example, are not very well suited for long shots. So if I put a 360 video camera here, I will not see where you're looking. So I will see your face, but I will see your hair, but I will get a very, very kind of diffuse view. So it's good for everything, to a couple of like 20 feet is the max you want to do to get details. Moving the camera is something you should not do if you want people to experience what they are going to do in VR. So you could use cars, you could use, you put the camera into a moving object, but it has to be like linear movement, because if you do like acceleration and stuff, it's going to create nausea. Eye contact is going to work very well. So the more you're going to be interacting with the camera, it's going to, these are the few stuff you will. But this is more like testing. And then it's about the format. So once you start, creating a prototype, it can be easy. Then learning from this prototype and learning about how you're going to, you're going to able to replicate it and to other series, or like Pearson did, for example. They wanted to make 140 of them. They had this idea in mind. So they went through a pretty intense preparation on how they would want to do it. What would be the format? How would be the right length? So for that is the most important part, I believe. But 2 days is a good time.
Do you guys offer services and support?
So we do. We have a pretty good online support center, so with real people as well, and a good documentation. We do offer training, and we work with a network of partners that we can recommend as well if you want some specific training. We cannot be everywhere, and we're working with production studios as well and training agencies that could be also interesting. So.
And you also offer like a white label app?
Yeah, so we have we have an enterprise kind of, publisher kind of plan. So with the SDK and so that you can integrate it within your existing apps. This is a different pricing model, obviously, based on total numbers of end users, and that's kind of a different. But that's something we can discuss definitely. Yeah.
Can you help us understand? So when other educational institutions are using VR for things like training, how are students assessed for us to understand whether or not they're getting something out of the experience?
Mm-hmm. So I would say VR is no different than any new teaching methodology. It's like you need to test it, and then you're going to use the same type of measurement you're going to be using for any types of new way to teach students. You see, you can track what is happening in the VR experience. So for example, you can do like heat maps, what we call heat maps. So basically you can see where people are looking, for example, and you can map it on the images. You can track the time spent, you can track, And then the learning outcomes, you can track it doing exactly the same type of tool that you already use. Mm.
I think you said more formative. It's practice, it's experiential. You're not gonna do a final exam here because you might not get the data back out that you want. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean that's this. I mean, it's technologically it is possible to do a final exam. The question is like, how do you measure empathy in a final exam? You know, that's. I mean, what question do you ask? So you can measure it by, you know, like with peer review systems, or you know, like how people feel good about their work, or whatever. I mean, but that's, I think, you know, these kind of training modules, looking back to a page to the caregivers. I mean, they are provided, you know, by in person, in training centers. You know, talking about the disease, showing pictures, showing videos. I mean, that's not very different. I mean, it's and how do you measure that? How do you measure how good this is? I mean, 90% of what people learn is forgotten within a month, right? I mean, so you can think about what the people remembered from it. Do they think about it more? I mean, but it's actually a very interesting field, and that's also one of the fields we are partnering with. We're interested to partner with universities to work on the research and on the advocacy research, basically on what is being done. I think there's a lot to be done there, right there.
I have a question. So in thinking about our engineering lab environments, and I'm going to go back to the French class example, maybe if I see it, I'll get a different picture, but yeah, I mean, just give me a second. So in our lab environments, it's quite interactive, and this appears to be a little bit more static. So how would we incorporate this in an interactive engineering lab environment for people who can't physically be in the space?
Like you're trying to ask, can you simulate
Group interactions through this platform with folks that may be dispersed?
Yeah. So, if I understand your question, you're asking me about how students could be able to be in a virtual classroom and interact with each other and with
Together.
virtual objects together.
Together.
Okay. That's really cool.
It's like Second Life. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
It was like in VR. Yeah.
So that's really, really cool. And actually so think about it this way. So what we do is basically one type of experience every of these students could be experiencing from this virtual classroom. Okay? So it could be a module that they're going to be experiencing in the classroom as in a virtual classroom, as it is a module they can experience in a real classroom. The classroom itself, the virtual classroom itself, is a new virtual. It's like a virtual environment of its own, which Microsoft is building, which specialized companies are building. Because I mean, basically, when you think about this, you're talking also about meeting rooms and virtual office space for people who are working remotely and so they can actually feel better, feel more like to be in the room together, right? So they can manipulate objects, but also if they can feel the presence of each other, so they can better communicate with each other.
And there have been attempts at doing that in the past that haven't worked. I know, like even Oculus is still trying to figure that out in some way. You know, I know they have, you know, their beta release of their Oculus Home. You can create your own environment and have others come visit that environment and interact with you.
Yeah.
And interact with your objects in that environment. But even that's really sort of early beta experiences for them. But you know, you can definitely see where it's going.
Yeah.
how you can have an avatar that arrives at a location that interacts with objects and other people. It's happening now, but I don't think in an education space, certainly, which is where it probably has a greater application.
It feels like what you're doing is, how can I say this, capturing reality and letting people interact with it, versus when I think about the SETA stuff, I think more of sort of 3D modeling, and being able to interact with a technology or a model in a virtual environment. It almost feels like your technology is more suited today for the liberal arts, for history, language.
I loved your example, though, of doing a presentation and also the ability to rapidly develop, because we use VR in our computer science courses. We talk about doing simulations all the time for educational purposes, and your 3 challenging bullets are still those challenging bullets. Like, by the time you spend the massive amount of time to do the development, that training or that technology has already changed. So you just sort of burn time. Whereas this, if you do have the ability to quickly take reality and put it in to an experience that feels pretty good, I think, and it's real. That's the other thing. It's very, I don't want to say cartoony, but sometimes simulations are like gamey, cartoony, and yeah, they create a sense of like an alternate reality, but they don't create a sense of a real reality. It's the caregiver that is a real picture. That's cool.
And in a way, so thank you for this. In a way, when we look at what we do, it's like think about what we do as, helping people connect with people. Where, like this other type of virtual reality that is also very interesting but different is like interacting with objects, interacting with, places, like with the environment. I think these are two. They have to work together, because at some point, you're going to have these virtual classrooms. They're going to be used, so we want to be integrated with them. So basically, the idea is that a Wonda VR experience could be and will be able integrated into a Unity-based project.
Ooh, that would be cool.
So you can do other things. But virtual classroom are having there are some interesting startups that already are doing stuff. Like there's one called VTime. So it's actually more for like B2Cs, for people who want to get together, like friends who want to get together in a around like virtual fireplace and stuff like this. And but it's going somewhere. The type of interactions you can get from there is pretty strong, and you get a very fulfilling feeling of being with your friends.
You mentioned that there's gaze detection for interactions. Is there any type of, and I think of something like maybe like a flight simulator, where you're in a cockpit and maybe you don't want to detect when they're gazing, but is there a way an interaction that is more intentional, pointing a finger at a button, or is there another type of detection to just make the action more intentional rather than just looking at a button? Or
so if you use these gaze interactions, they can be also like controller-based interactions. Okay. So basically what happens is that if you don't have a controller, then this will be this little dot at the center of the screen that will be kind of the visor of your. So that would be gaze. But if you have a controller, so if you're using like a Oculus Rift controller or Daydream controller, then this is going to actually be your pointing. So you're going to be able to point at buttons without necessarily looking at the button right in front of you.
Actually, I just saw, so for Flight Simulator today, there's an add-on that you can add on where you can use your Oculus Touch, and you don't have to have an actual yoke. You can virtually grab the yoke. You can virtually push like the comms buttons and everything. You can turn the motor on and off. You can flip all the switches with an Oculus Touch now. Like I think they're in beta 2.
With haptic feedback.
Yeah, with haptic feedback. So when you pull the throttle, it actually pulling the throttle, it's actually doing all the and you're seeing those buttons and you're interacting with those buttons.
Yeah.
pretty. I know the software. It's an add-on to Flight Simulator X, but it's pretty intense because I was watching some videos on it the other day.
Other things we've talked about around academics is
I have Oculus.
for like training on expensive medical equipment. You know, having an image of the equipment and being able to interact with the buttons rather than having to be in a physical place that has that equipment.
And AR and VR would be good for that. I mean, actually, I don't know how much you've been but really that's also when you think about the future of headsets. I mean, you can think of it as AR and VR being together. So basically, I would be able to see with you this piece of equipment, and I would be able to interact with it. You'll see how I interact with it, and you would be able to. And then, if you want to get into the room of where this equipment is, then both together we'll be able to like say, okay, let's zoom into this room, and then we'll have the same piece of equipment, but with the whole environment behind us in full VR. And then when we want to go back to the real environment and have, we're going to be able to do it. So zoom in and zoom out from real environment. Yeah.
What's the bandwidth requirement like on the consumption side?
I would say it's the same as with what we do, and we work very hard to make it light and fast. I would say it's no more bandwidth than the bandwidth you need to watch a video on YouTube. And it's going to get better and better because as of now we have to we stream the full 360 video. Only what we really need to stream is what you're looking at. So we could save half of a bandwidth just by. But since the quality of headset is a little bit lower than the quality of your computer screens, we can stream a lower quality video. So basically, in the end, it's the same.
Thanks.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, sure. So, hello.
Hi, sorry. Sneaking in.
So actually, I can both present it on one headset and on the big screen. Do you want to have on the big screen as well?
Actually, one of the things I've noticed is participation. When one person is in VR, other people are paying attention. Right? So a lot of times I'll have people over and I'll be using my VR headset, or someone will be using it, and others will be watching and really paying attention to what's going on the screen.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And learning from that experience so that when they jump in, because they want to jump in and try it, that they are also sort of learning from that, picking up on mistakes and cues and becoming they're building on that experience, even just watching someone else do
it. These women, it was at the Facebook had this huge booth and they were trying to promote their the women doing it must have been a scary, they kept screaming. I think there were some cliffs and some scary stuff. So anyway, it was very engaging. It was like a new form of esports where it was like the sport was just being entertained by the person.
Yeah. Right. Well, and if you think about what not even millennials, younger than millennials are doing today, they're consuming so much video just watching and watching and watching. Yeah. I know my daughters do it. They're 10 and 12 years old. And if you let them, all they will do all day long is watch someone else do something, right? On YouTube. I don't know how they're applying that knowledge. Sometimes you have to put a stop to it. But in that same way, if you're watching that extreme sport or someone else have a learning experience, you do absorb that. You do take that in. So.
No, good point. Cool. So do you want to introduce yourself quickly? Okay, cool. So what are we gonna? So I do a quick walkthrough this experience. So this one was really meant to be used in VR with the students. But as you can see, so you can actually play it also on a screen and. It's in French, as it's for a French course, so everything, all the interface is in French, so I'm sure you understand the basic commencer, like start. And so you can say also the design of the piece was not meant for web, because otherwise we would have looked at things differently. The idea is that when you are in VR, you see everything in the same. So you can go either through the agenda of each of the characters, or you can start right away.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Lee, j'ai 11 ans, je vis avec ma mère Anne, mon père Nicolas et mon petit frère Kim. J'habite dans la rue Albert Thomas près de la place de la République. J'aime bien jouer au tennis, manger des pâtes et des pizzas et de la purée. J'aime aussi aller au collège et passer du temps avec ma famille. Le soleil qui apparaît.
So Lee, who is 12 years old, we train him for 2 hours.
Aujourd'hui, on va au CAM, notre club de tennis à Montrouge. C'est en dehors de Paris. On est tous les mercredis, on y va. Et aujourd'hui, on est mercredi, donc on y va. Moi, mon cours de tennis, il est à 2h de l'après-midi.
Just go keep going. So there are about 10 seconds. So you can actually go to
On fait les devoirs avec ma nounou Annabella. Et on fait de l'histoire géographie parce que j'ai un contrôle
using these
demain.
cameras, you are documenting many different
Sur les
details
droits et les devoirs des enfants.
of the culture and that can be discussed in class. You notice that? Sorry?
There's like a whole leg of something.
Yeah. Yeah, so you get an idea.
Bonjour. Aujourd'hui, on est mardi.
So you play the game pretty well. One of the things that so there's one. What do you mean?
So the screenshot you showed earlier of the woman at the cafe, could you turn that into a simulated dialogue where as the viewer you had to interact with it?
Yeah, so that could maybe be a kind of an example that responds to your question. So first of all, so here the idea was to say, okay, so the first kind of introductory scene of this with Benoit would be to be, so that's a photograph, like the 360 photograph. And the idea is that you're going to be able to kind of take the time to explore this space and then trigger audio and text kind of annotation based on this.
Ce que vous regardez est l'affiche du premier projet porté par la compagnie Les Lendemains d'hier que j'ai créé avec un ami et que j'ai eu la chance de mettre en scène. Il s'agit d'une adaptation de la...
So that's one thing, and then to show you a little bit.
Action. Du coup, bienvenue chez moi, dans mon humble appartement parisien, pour une petite expérience magique autour du choix, on va dire. Alors pour toute expérience magique digne de ce nom, il faut des cartes. Et c'est pas n'importe quelle carte, ce sont des cartes noires que je vais disposer ici. Je vais les mélanger dans un premier temps et je vais faire 2 lignes de 4. Et le but, ça va être de choisir d'abord une ligne, puis une carte. Alors on va mélanger. Comme ceci. On peut même couper. Et on va distribuer 2 lignes de 4 cartes.
So yeah, and then you can choose which line you want to
Maintenant, à vous de choisir quelle ligne on élimine et quelle ligne on garde.
So you can choose either this one or...
On élimine donc cette ligne-là.
So yeah, that's another. So and you could imagine having like
Je peux une première fois, une deuxième fois. Et il nous reste 4 cartes. Le but va maintenant être de choisir l'une de ces 4 cartes.
Specifically, if you want to go into.
Sorry.
Yes, this is quite, posterity. But yes, that I'm thinking in counseling, in the healthcare one is interesting, and I'm curious is if we've connected them to Care Academy, because that would be a really interesting use case. Practice their counseling skills in that environment with a bunch of different scenarios. Or we don't do language courses online today, but we could do that. You could do it in...
And we have some demos now. Yeah, we can share if you like also.
Interested to know, besides, I noticed you had a student plan. Besides like engineering students, who else do you see typically using this software?
Right.
Yeah. And they're going to be using also like web VR technologies, like JavaScript and other.
Yeah. I was curious, do you use it with any AR, like, white labeled apps? Like, for the same reason, I'm like building in the trigger. I see it as being like really cool. You can do it really fast because there's this other plugin I think that's.
You what? So we're just gonna.
So like there's a plugin for. Why can't I think of it? Unity. There's a plugin for Unity where you can very quickly, all you have to have is like a 3D model of something, and you can very quickly convert it into an AR app, which I also love AR because it's just so much more usable. Yeah, like, and we have all these applications that we have ideas about. So do you guys do anything with AR associated with the video creation?
It's not yet, I would say. We've had some projects that were like almost like using VR as a AR solution. And so one of them was like it's like a treasure hunt, an educational treasure hunt in the woods.
Yeah.
So what they did is that they put like a QR codes on the trees. They shot 360-degree photos at this exact same spot. And basically, you would arrive in the forest and see this tree, and you understand that you would need to scan this QR code. This will trigger the scene, the 360 scene that you're going to be able to. So you basically will be simulating like a AR mode. Only you'll be in 360. So that has been so you can simulate an AR experience. Now I've seen one of the things we've seen as well, like kind of interesting, is like. I don't know if you've seen this thing where in AR where you like this kind of magic door that shows up, and you can look around and you can actually enter it, and then when you enter it, you are in a fully immersive world.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's really cool. And I
Can
mean,
we do that?
but you need glasses, right, for that?
Yeah.
Because doing it with a
Multi-mode, yeah.
phone is possible, but it's kind of not so it's like it's not very easy to use, right? I mean, so you would need glasses anyway to make it interesting in terms of experience. But yeah, that's a very cool use case.
How about identifying the user? Like if you were going to do some sort of training on this, to identify the user that is doing the training and to be able to document that they've completed the training.
Good question. Yeah, sure. So what we do is that we are integrating with the TinCan API. So basically everything. So then you can track the users that are logged in and get the scoring on each. Which sequence was seen. Was it seen until the end? So you can plug it into your scoring system. So that's what we do. We're also integrating with Google sign-on, like single sign-on. So also like students who want to create their stuff can also sign in with their. I don't know if you're using Google sign-on or others, but basically with single sign-on, so that you can track users based on their student ID. Yeah.
Of your customer base, or how many schools do you have where students are really the primary users versus where a professor or teacher is creating content? I was really intrigued by the example you talked about with students creating
90%.
Really? 90%. Okay, so that's the bulk of the.
Yeah, and I guess that's what also. That's the idea is to have students more engaged, right?
Yeah.
Into the educational experience. And I guess that's one of the things we bring to the table. It's really a creation tool that is very affordable and accessible to the students.
That's good.
We're just generating all these random ideas. So we, for example, our engineering students do these flight tests, but the thing is the plane only seats 4. So you could do the flight test with the camera and then allow others to just quickly experience it as well. Our capstone projects often, by the way, I just want to say we are evolving because engineering capstone presentations can be rather dry. So we have a capstone project right now. They're working on this kite that would generate self-resourceful power, right? It's a huge parasailing kite. But in order for them to test and to do all their functional testing and all that stuff, it's happening out at some windy beach, And so they do have some video, but it would be a cool way for them to showcase for their peers and to their professors in a very quick, low development, but high impact on here's what we experienced, but you couldn't be there. That's cool.
You're experiencing the same thing that they did.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And one other thing also that is interesting is to do and easy to do is even if they are working on real-time 3D Unity-based experiences, you can shoot a 360 video within a 3D world. So then you can make it accessible as well, on a kind of
That's one of the the Google Earth 360 app does that a lot.
Uh-huh.
So you can explore an area, and then there are certain points where you can basically enter that spot and view a 360 view of that location.
Yeah.
That was one of the.
So these are called flyovers, I think. They are used for 3D games promotion as well. So you can get a feel of a whole 3D environment. So you're flying in this virtual world. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
It would be great as a tourist guide. So if I travel to France, let's say, so I just stay in somewhere and just have the glasses and headsets, and it would tell me this is it would tell me the history about the places and.
Yeah, Google Expeditions has been a very huge promoter of this kind of application for K-12. I think they did it with 3 million students already. So they have a whole library of virtual expeditions to countries, and and they have been like providing the cardboard and the headset in packs to schools around the world, and pretty interesting benchmark, yeah, for K-12.
I'm gonna go try it on my purpose. Do you do demo accounts? He's like that.
What? Sorry.
I'm gonna go create some content.
Okay, cool. Great, thank you so much. I mean, is there any?
Yeah, that was
cool.
great. That was fun.
Thank you.
Right, when you want to go first.
Mhm.